We're sitting here with Puneet Jagralapudi, the Strategy and Business Development Officer at LSI. Quite an interesting title. Tell me, what does that mean you do?
Well, I think what it basically boils down to is helping set the future direction over the next 3 to 5 years for the organization. We are expanding beyond a chips and cards or a silicon and cards vendor. We are trying to understand what problems customers are facing as the industry goes through its evolution, as storage goes through its evolution. And then we are looking at ways in which we can help solve the big problems that customers are facing.
Your talk was on software-defined storage.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
If you look at the entire history of computing, we probably are at the most exciting time, both in terms of computing, but also in terms of storage. So customers are looking at deploying storage at scales that you have never seen before. Right? So when you talk about big data, when you talk about cloud-like deployments, these are really massive scale that customers are looking to adopt. So we see a few different trends that are kind of converging right now. One is, well, if you're looking to deploy infrastructure that can scale, that can be elastic, and that can support the massive amounts of data that you're using, be it as storage or more likely for analytics, you need to be able to manage all of that. You need to be able to orchestrate all of that. So management and orchestration is a really big deal. We had an awesome keynote from VMware where they talked about where they see things going forward. And I think it's very much in line with what LSI's vision is. So being able to automate and manage at scale is of the essence. And we are looking at ways in which how we can help customers do that. But that's just the first piece. There is a lot more going on in terms of, well, if you're looking to deploy at scale in the cloud or in a private cloud within your own environment, you need to be able to provide the right type of data services. You need to be able to provide the right type of storage for customers. And we are looking at ways in which we can do that for both virtualized deployments as well as scale-out file and object storage that we see rolling out in the future.
What are the elements in this?
The key piece is the rapid pace of innovation and the rapid pace of both on the application as well as in the underlying infrastructure has decoupled software from hardware. So we see these two progressing in parallel going forward. So the old days of me buying a legacy system or a tightly coupled integrated system from a traditional storage vendor are probably going to go away as we progress forward. So for example, if you take the computers as an analogy, you used to buy machines that were tightly coupled, servers that were tightly coupled, like mainframes. But now with technologies like Linux and Windows, you see the decoupling of hardware from the software, and that's enabled rapid innovation. So we expect the same thing happening in storage, where all these services end up in software, and we have the right hooks on the hardware that hook into that software and that enable performance at massive scales.
Tell me a little bit more about the way in which virtualization, which I heard a lot about, is really making a difference for customers.
So if you look at what's happened, say pre-2000s, so as we saw the rollout of industry standard servers, what you see is a lot of workloads were siloed and were not really using the underlying hardware to the maximum possible amount.
So functions were going into one storage place, trying to get things done, but not using all of the storage available.
Servers were being used for one specific application. They had the capacity to do a lot more.
Okay.
And we had this, what was called IT sprawl. So you had multiple servers deployed just to do one thing at a time. And what companies and technologies like VMware enabled customers to do was basically consolidate that IT sprawl. So rather than having a lot of spare capacity on every single machine, I was able to bring that together, and I was able to manage and orchestrate that much more effectively. Now on storage systems, we see a similar type of movement where we are looking at ways in which, rather than having siloed storage deployments across my data center, I'm able to bring all that storage capacity together I'm able to orchestrate and manage that at scale. And in some cases, I'm able to decouple that just the way VMware enabled me to reduce IT sprawl. I'm able to decouple the software that's used for storage from the underlying hardware. And that enables me to do a lot more interesting things at scale and at better economics.
Tell us a little more about software-defined storage.
We expect the impact of software-defined storage across the entire data center. So if we look at how we think about the data center stack within LSI, we define 3 tiers. So we have at the bottom infrastructure. At the middle, we have what we call the operating system and systems management capabilities. And at the top, you have a platform and you have multiple applications running on it. We expect software-defined storage to impact all 3 layers of this data center stack. So for example, we expect the underlying infrastructure to become more intelligent, to be able to provide capabilities that the software can take advantage of. So we see some intelligence going into the infrastructure, and that's where LSI is trying to push the value that it brings into the data center. On the middle layer, so around systems management and operating systems, we're going to see a lot more newer points of integration. So you now need to manage your infrastructure at scale. You need to be able to plug that into one single pane of glass. You need to be able to manage your entire data center through it. So we see new points of integration, probably new standards coming about in that area. And the application and platforms need to be able to take advantage of software-defined storage underneath. So for example, they need to be able to bring in some of the capabilities and features into the software layer. And we see that happening with things like Cassandra and eventual consistency and Hadoop, where a lot of the capabilities are pulled into software, into the application layer. You are now able to deploy a lot more on more industry standard hardware. Now, the way it gets packaged up and sold to the end customer, that's really interesting too, because it's giving rise to a lot of new business models. So for example, we have vendors who now package software-defined storage technologies with hardware and sell it as an appliance. We have ISVs who never really featured in storage now entering the storage space. So for example, Gluster, which is now owned by Red Hat or being driven by Red Hat, has a major piece or a major part to play within your data center. We have newer vendors like Inktank, who's driving Ceph, and a lot of other object and block storage technologies that are now entering the data center in ways that wasn't possible previously.